I wanted to share what my I don't have a movie set yet to watch for Christmas time because we're recording this before the holidays to our listeners in the future. Every year my family tends to watch like a movie for like Christmas Eve together, and it's always divisive about what we're gonna watch. This year I have a good list of suggestions. I've scoured the letterbox, but I'm more excited for my New Year's Eve plans because the movie theater I volunteer for, Grand Illusion, we're doing a volunteer friends and family screening of back-to-back double feature Talented Mr. Ripley and Velvet Goldmine.
Oh, that's
So
good. I haven't
we're
seen Velvet Goldmine, but I love Talented Mr. Ripley. The ending is like one of my favorite movie endings of all time.
oh, it's very, very good.
I
I
still
Although
haven't
my
seen neither of
although my
those.
dad hates it, it gives him the same
But I,
vibe as Uncut Gems because it's so tense all the time.
yeah, that's what makes it so good.
Yeah, but like he likes feel good movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but both of those movies were movies I watched for the first time in 2024, and that like I loved and had like thought a lot about this year. So it feels very like fitting that I'm like ending the year rewatching them. And yeah, the main volunteer who's organizing it was like glam rock queer 90s New Year's Eve party, and I'm like, that's a vibe. That's I'm gonna dress up for sure.
Yeah, vintage. I think you and McGregor too, so like he can actually sing.
Yes. Yep.
was also thinking maybe Strange Days, since it like technically takes place during New Year's. I haven't watched it yet, but I know that it has been had like a big resurgence among film people.
Which one is that?
It's directed by Bigelow, I believe, and it's has like Angela Bassett and Ray Fiennes, and it's like a near future New Year's
Oh.
cyberpunk thing. That's what I know about it.
Sounds kind of hot, honestly. Like,
I I think I'm gonna try to get one of my suggestions for Christmas to watch with my family is Long Kiss Goodnight, which I've never seen, but apparently does take place during Christmas. And my dad likes that movie. I'm pretty sure that's Samuel L. Jackson and Gina Davis, an action movie. I kind of just love films that take place during a holiday and are like thus then holiday movies because I think it's fun when
don't don't they
people
always say that about Die Hard? I've never seen
yeah,
Die Hard. They always say that about Die Hard.
it takes place
Like
on
Die Hard is a
Christmas.
Christmas movie, and they're like, no, it's
Yeah.
not.
I think categories are meant to be fucked with. And so I think that
Yeah, like the
the
Babadook being an LGBT icon.
yeah. I just think it's kind of like it's one of those like of all of the film discourses to be have an opinion on holiday movies and what defines a holiday movie is so inconsequential, and so I like that that is something that people could fight about because it's so much
I
nicer to
mean,
fight
right
about than
now,
like actual
yeah, it
toxic
doesn't
shit.
matter. Like right now, people are talking about like intimacy coordinator discourse. Like that is so much more baggage than like is something a Christmas movie.
Yeah. Do you guys have
And
any?
speaking of discourse,
Oh, sag
Oh
into
God.
hot D.
Yes. Well, speaking of discourse, Fabiola, what are we discussing this episode?
yeah, I feel like this is the big wild card topic of the season. And I there's like a really strong argument for it, but it like necessitates some really strong backing. So I went full out with the Daniel Harris, the death of camp diva worship article, which is a classic to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're talking about House of the Dragon. We're probably gonna focus a lot on season two,
Yeah. I mean,
partly because season two is like it needs some love. And
it
I
needs
also, unpopular opinion, I like it more than the first season.
That is a bold take on some corners of the internet.
you know, my take is that there are stronger episodes in season stronger singular episodes in season 2, but maybe season one is a slightly stronger season.
I could agree with that.
That's
Like it could
fair.
be seen
Yeah.
as consistent.
But I feel like we should say off at top, so many of the issues are from things that were outside of the showrunner's control. So we're sympathetic to the issues of season two. Also, we need to introduce our lovely guest, Erika.
Oh,
Who are
hi.
you?
I'm
Yes.
Erika. I have been I dabble in camp, but I'm mostly a Song of Ice and Fire reader since I was a teenager, but not a book purist, which is something when it comes to House of the Dragon, which is another button issue in the fandom. And I can see some campy elements in season two, and we've been doing live viewings of season two, so I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to get your perspective as like a book reader, like you said, and also someone who has seen various fandom discourses. I am someone who has studied fandom and fan discourses, and I have not engaged with any of that for House of the Dragon. I was
That is
Good.
why your skin is clear and your crops are
yeah.
watered.
I literally like I Fabiola was like, Saffron, you need to watch the show. You need to watch the show for during when season one was airing. And I don't even think I didn't start watching it until the entire season was out. And then I was like, okay, yeah, this is really fun. I really like Olivia Cook. This is good. And then season two came in, and I was like, I'm here for Allison, and that's my bestie. And I've been unbothered because I'm like, I'm here for these characters, and I have critique, absolutely, but the most fanish, I guess, my fanish practices for this show has kind of just been discussing it with you guys and watching Glidus and Alt Swift X videos. And
That's
that's
really
We're some of
all
the
you
only
need.
people that need to be listened to.
And I only started watching those videos because Fabiola Liaño kept sending links, and I was like, okay, I'll put this on. And then I was like, oh, they're funny.
Yeah, it's either that or Smosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like I'm come to this from like a blend of Erika and Saffron in the sense that like I have started reading the main series. I'm like 3/4 through Storm of Swords, and I'm like, yeah, I'm mainly most attached to the Dance to the Dragons, which is what House of the Dragon covers. But I'm not a Fire and Blood purist, even though I do love Fire and Blood. I also have it with me here.
Oh.
Signed
I should have gotten my
of
copy
it.
out of storage so we could match.
And you only started reading the books after watching season one, is that correct?
Yeah, I watched season one and then I was gifted the book. And then I read the whole book within like a few months. And yeah, I've been actively in the House of the Dragon trenches for almost 3 years now.
I can't believe it's been that long. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Oh
bad.
Jesus.
Like
So
it's concerning for me.
for someone who might listen to this episode who really has no context whatsoever, has maybe heard the name Game of Thrones, but doesn't really know what's going on, as I think was before watching this show. Erika is someone who's, you said you've been reading the book since you were a teenager. What are the main important, like,
Beats, I guess.
yeah, what's the context that you think is important for people to know to get into
Uh,
then discussing the show House of the Dragon?
yeah, well, Daenerys, it all starts with like Daenerys Targaryen, the hot blonde albino everyone knows. she is the most popular character in Game of Thrones. So they made a spin-off prequel set like 150 years or so before the main show about her family and the Targaryens and a civil war they had where her spiritual predecessor, Rhaenyra Targaryen, is in a war for the Iron Throne for the Kingdom of Westeros against her half brother, Aegon. Basically simplified because she's a woman and he's a man and there's inheritance law. And it just becomes this big, bloody conflict with a bunch of different scheming people.
And
Yeah, like it's both very simple but also insanely complicated.
oh my
Yeah.
God, trying to take notes, and I was like, there are so many characters. I don't think like I'm like, how are we going to bring up all of the characters that have their little moments and have, you know, funny little bits that we like? Because like we could probably talk for 10 minutes about Sir Simon Strong, and it's like, that's
Who's that?
who's
Like,
that?
yeah. No, but well, that's the thing because George R. R. Martin, when he wrote the original book series, he was frustrated with the limitations of TV as like a TV writer, and he was like, I'm pretty sure he endeavored to make a fantasy series that would be impossible to adapt. So he went like wild on like the family trees and like the similar names and stuff because that's really hard to put into TV. And then somehow it became a smash success on TV.
And
Yeah.
so Fire and Blood, which has the section that got adapted into House of the Dragon, that is in like in character kind of in universe history text, right? That's the idea.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
basically the scholars of the world, which are called maesters, found sources and wrote down their version of the history. And then there are like wild characters like a court jester who writes his own version and adds a lot of sex. And it's just kind of like competing histories where the reader is like, ooh, I have to decide which version is true. Are any of them true? So when the show adapts this, they take this in mind as like a meta narrative on like their version of what really happened. But of course, you know, it totally diverges from what is strictly said in the book to be their own reimagining, which is where a lot of people take issue.
Even though George R. R. Martin is involved.
Well,
Yes, but he's also kind of upset as well.
he really he this is some drama because he made a blog post about how little changes can build up, alluding to the butterfly effect and posting a picture of a butterfly in this blog post and
Oh.
how, you know,
And
if
it's a
all these changes
particularly
happen,
spoilery
yeah,
blog post.
things can go wrong and the adaptation can go haywire. And then he deleted it and it caused a lot of drama, even I think with people who weren't heavily online. I think even people were like, this is kind of a big deal. So yeah, it's speculated what's going on behind the scenes, but generally he is accepted to be, you know, producer or whatever on the show.
And the main showrunner is Ryan Condal.
Yes.
And I think we haven't mentioned it's
Yes.
HBO. Probably
Yeah.
everyone knows that Game of Thrones was HBO because that was kind of like they're the one fantasy show that's won awards because it's HBO. But
Yeah.
then also House of the Dragon. It streams on Max because HBO rebranded. Just still find
Yeah.
so fucking stupid,
I
but
know. They went with
whatever.
the Max part of the name instead of HBO.
I was gonna say that like that's part of the reason why I'm like not exactly a Fire and Blood purist, even though it's one of my favorite books. And it's because it's kind of impossible to accurately adapt because of all the contradicting sources. And also, it's written like a history book. You don't really get to know the characters, you get to know how the characters have been perceived decades after they lived.
Mm.
So, like, yeah, if anything, the show is like a a companion piece to the book and vice versa.
Because the show is still a version of events. It doesn't mean that it's the version of events, which I feel
Yeah,
it
because all of it is made
literally,
up.
I mean, it literally, like, this is why I'm like, I fucking loved the direction they were taking stuff and end of season two, because they literally reference the meta narrative. They reference the fact that it's all a story with the weird, like, Damon's trippy tree vision dream thing where
His ayahuasca vision quest.
yeah. I mean, is the quote is does like Dream Helena actually say like you're in a story, or is it more I'm misremembering? I didn't rewatch that
I
scene.
I I think I I think it was like the words. I definitely
I
remember hearing the
think
word
it's
story.
it's
Yeah.
all a story. It's all a story, and you're just but one part in it.
Yeah.
And I love meta
And like they also
narratives.
straight up spoil a bunch of things in that episode as well, which I loved.
I mean, they like
Because
spoil
it's
it.
like, yeah, we technically know what is gonna happen. Like if you've seen both Game of Thrones and read Fire and Blood, or like watched the video essays
Yeah.
from people who've read the source material.
I mean, they don't like straight up spoil it, but we do know what that doesn't she tell Aemon that he and Damon are gonna kill each other or something like that. Like, and
Kinda.
it's
There's also like a bunch of spoilers in how things are framed and in
mm,
the editing as well.
yeah. What? How do we? What ass? I feel like there's a lot of people who have discussed this show, criticized this show, gone into how it works as an adaptation, all of that. But this is a show about things being camp. And we've got to try to prove, basically, that this show is camp.
I'm doing
Where
like
do
a
you,
drum roll. I'm doing a drum roll for Fabiola right now.
yeah, where would you like to start us with this, Fabiola? How are you gonna, how,
Present your camp case.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's most academically obvious with Rainier and Alicent, but I think it's also very clear on how thoroughly color coded everything is and
Mm,
how everything is just fueled by signifiers and like signs of legitimacy, like the sword Blackfire, the Iron Throne, and Rainier and Aegon each have their own distinct yet like legitimate crowns.
hmm. That's interesting because I was gonna say I took most of my notes on just the melodrama of it all.
That is another aspect of it because I was revisiting parts of the Broy de Chanel video essay on May December,
Mm,
and I feel like to understand House of the Dragon, you need to understand that this is a melodrama first and foremost. And I feel like that's what's get lost on a lot of people.
yeah. I mean, there are multiple plots that could be in a telenovela, except the characters are wearing, sword hilts and crowns and have dragons.
Oh yeah, like all the who slept with who drama.
Yeah. Literally
Yeah.
who, these questions of parentage and are you a bastard or are you a virgin or the fact that
You're my twin and now we're killing each other.
yeah. Or there was I remember I was going back through our Discord chat and I found a clip that I had pulled from one of the Dragon Talk episodes where I think Ultwift X was like complaining about the whole kind of Alicent misinterpreting Viserys's dying words, and it's like, why is that what is leading to this war? And I'm like, it's a soap opera plot. Like, I don't think that's silly. I think that's like in line with all the
Like
other conflicts.
when I was revisiting the Bro Additional video, she outlines from various academic sources on like what makes a melodrama and how that has changed from theatrical plays to film. And in film, it very House of Dragon has all the characteristics basically
Oh.
a film melodrama. It's has the female leads and its focus on women's stories. It's a particularly domestic setting. Like even though it's all about like a war in Westeros, it's mainly about this family. Also about how Rhaenyra and Alicent are always like in conflict with their wants, but also their sense of duty and responsibility, which is a key aspect in a lot of film melodrama. And like there's also a lot of emotionality, a lot of things in this show are driven by emotions and characters' histories with each other. And there's also the element of like social consciousness and just an awareness of how the society works and like the
Mhm.
different class differences, especially in season two. And
Yeah,
also
for yeah,
a,
season
a lot
two,
of,
the bastards. They just round up all of them. There's class differences right there.
yeah.
Well,
And also the heavy reliance on like big emotional music.
mm, yeah. Oh, the score
Like,
slaps. It's
yeah.
Soundtrack's
like
amazing as usual.
it's
Yeah, and it's like specifically to like underpin the drama and the big character moments.
yeah.
And House of the Dragon does all of that.
Yeah. You know, I mentioned there's like all of these miscommunications and, you know, heightened reactions to relationships and stuff, but that comes from the society, that comes from like the social structure about class and gender, that is, it's this fantasy setting that is kind of a abstraction exaggeration of Middle Ages Europe and how class and gender worked, at least in our kind of perception and memory of that history.
Yeah, with oh, sorry, I just wanted to say to
Uh,
that point about like the melodrama, something that I thought was interesting, not in season two, but in season one, with all the scandal and stuff, is Rhaenyra and Alicent, the main characters, when they're teenagers, Rhaenyra sneaks off to, you know, hang out with her uncle and things happen and she sleeps with someone, but that all happens. But she's having a confrontation with her best friend. And if you didn't know the context, you would think that Allison is she the historical medieval context is she wants to know if her friend has maintained her virginity for the feudal social context. But if you didn't know what was going on, you would think this was lesbian relationship drama and that one of the teenagers is accusing the other of sneaking out with a boy and like cheating. And that is very much the vibe of the scene. And I was like, whoa, that I think that was really where I was like, something's going on with this show.
that's when you
That's when I took the Rainiscent pill.
yeah, I was also gonna say that House of the Dragon to me is like specifically Sirkian melodrama in the sense that it's like very image aware. Like there are
Mm.
so many moments and like still images from the show that remind me so much of Douglas Sirk, like how in all the Heaven Laws, like the image of the main character seeing herself in the TV because like the TV is basically this gift that her kids give her so like she can be occupied and basically confined to this domestic sphere, and the TV is just kind of like this trap. And there's also like some window shots of her as well. And I definitely see that with all the like enclosure imagery with Allison.
Yeah.
And also the final shot of Rhaenyra in the season very much reminds me of that iconic shot in Written of the Wind where I think her character is Dorothy, where like she's holding the
Yeah.
oil rig with the big portrait of her dad behind her. And it's like just like this devastating resignation to the role of inheritor.
Yeah. Because in the shot of Rhaenyra at the end of the season 2 is like her surrounded by all of these tomes of all this history. And yeah, it's like very
And
like
she looks so tiny among them, and it's like a cage.
yeah.
I've given the war to the dragons. The dragon rider should lead us.
And what of justice? Of temperance, or is strength now to be our only god? So you cast me aside.
Have I not spared you? What we must do now is terrible. Will you preside over it? Is this who you are, Alison?
I did not ask to be spared. And I did not give you leave to speak my name. My part is here, whether I will or no. It was decided for me long ago.
I just have to quickly say, going back to our little opening discussion, one of the movies I'm going to suggest my family watch is All That Heaven Allows. So
That is a Christmas movie.
it's a Christmas movie. It's if we're going to talk about images and like the representation of if we're going to talk about images and how motivation and stuff is characterized through costuming, props and things like set design, for me the image that comes to mind first from this show is Allison in her green dress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like color,
Like this is a like so much of the imagery and associations with the conflict is just color coding. Like the factions are the
Team-
blacks and the greens.
Yeah.
They're named after their colors. And so each side has very much like strictly adhered to these colors. Partly because like that's like what they did in the actual Middle Ages, like with heraldry, like you need to be able to tell who's a friend and who's an enemy in battle. But with it's like 24/7 with these people, and like what you wear is who you are, what you wear is your politics, basically.
Yeah, I think it's also important to distinguish them through attire because, you know, this show is about a family that is very inbred and they all wear white wigs. So they look very similar to each other visually. And one of the characters, Rhaenys, actually has darker hair in the books, but they made her another albino so that you could visually code her with her family. So you know, show onlys wouldn't get confused that yes, she is related to all the white-haired people. So when Daemon has his vision and he sees himself turn into Aemond, another character on the other side, they literally just put Aemon's eye patch on Daemon because they have the same hair already. So,
Matt Smith does the face.
yeah. So because they look so similar, the heraldry is even more important to distinguish them.
This kind of reminds me of, I was gonna just say on the topic of like wigs and how it's like this like way of distinguishing the different, like not the differences but the similarities between these family members. It kind of reminds me a little bit of our conversation about Interview with the Vampire and the color contacts that all the actors wear. It's different because like there's a lot of significance with eyes rather than hair. But I do find it like really, I think it's really interesting that there's like these two really great shows that are coming out right now that are like have this kind of way of making these actors look kind of different and not quite human through practical like special effects makeup, essentially, you know, having these white wigs as this like way to kind of signify the Valyrian royal, like not even royalty, like godhood kind of, right? Is that part of the lore? And then of course all of the,
Well, at least like that's what they tell themselves.
That's what they want us to believe. Dun dun dun.
But yeah, I was gonna say that like with the whole universality of the hair, it also reminds me of like the big Daemon vision at the end where he only sees the back of Daenerys and like he can only like deduce what things are but by like what he sees. And I know that the showrunner has said that Daemon probably doesn't know who that is. Like he might think that's like a daughter of his or something. He just is a Targaryen woman. That's it. Yeah, it really helps otherizing Rhaenyra's three older kids because of their darker hair, and like it just makes their parentage really obvious, which is very much a source of a bunch of drama that kind of comes to a head and arguably one of the more camp scenes in this show, which is the big Driftmark altercation.
yeah.
Yep.
And let it be known, anyone whose tongue dares to question the birth of Princess Rhaenyra's sons should have it removed.
Thank you, Father.
Alicent, stay with the king! Hold your ground! Do not sequester Alicent! Do not sequester Alicent! Stay your hand, Paul!
No! You've gone too far.
What have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law. Will you flout it all to do as you please?
Alicent, let her go!
Where is duty? Where is sacrifice? It's trampled under your pretty foot again.
Release the blade, Alicent.
And now you take my son's eye. And to even that you feel entitled.
Exhausting, wasn't it? Hiding beneath the cloak of your own righteousness. But now they see you as you are.
Oh, it's my favorite scene still, though. I love that scene so much.
Yeah. It's just such, there's just so much going on in that scene that's kind of about perception and just mass gaslighting. And also it's just this big crash out amongst everyone. Iconically, Luke's little scream. Like that entire scene is just, it's so fun to listen to, not just watch, because there's so much going on. And then there's the iconic Alicent speech of where's duty, where's sacrifice.
Trampled under your pretty foot again.
I know, and then everyone was making foot fetish jokes. Little did we know.
Yeah. For listeners who do not know the show, Alicent in later scenes lets this, in exchange for getting information or duties carried out in her name,
Spy master shenanigans. It's a very creepy scene, but we did not have foresight, so we did not know.
Yeah. God, Laris is such an interesting character, though. Like, just a creepy guy who uses like his power over other people, but the fact that also like he manipulates and exerts control over others, because in other aspects of his life he has very little control or power because he is disabled and otherized by society.
Yeah, his actor even said of that scene that it isn't about that it's a weird foot thing. It's that he wants to bring, someone who is a queen, down to his level. It's very psychological for him.
Yeah. And then he also cuts out, people's tongues and tortures them for
Yeah.
information. Like, he's not a great dude on many levels.
Yeah. But hey, he's a great physical therapist.
Yeah, that also
He
reminds
helps
me
the
of
characters
another.
too.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, that also reminds me of another aspect of melodrama in film, which is the morally ambiguous characters, and that's
Mm.
kind of everyone in this show.
Yeah. Sorry.
I thought you were gonna bring up the mommy dearest of the of that season 2 plot line, kind of. Of her, like,
Yeah, a lot of House of the Dragon to me is very whatever happened to Baby Jane.
yes, why
and
did I say mommy
Dearest.
dearest? I guess it's both. It's kind of both. I totally meant whatever happened to Baby Jane. But I mean, like,
I feel like we might need to explain what we mean by a lot of House of the Dragon is very Baby Jane.
Yeah, okay. So another plot point in season 2 is because there's season 2, they've now properly gone to war. All of season 1 was this setup of kind of understanding the backstory of these two sides of the family and why they want power and claim to the throne. And then season 2, war basically actually starts breaking out. Fights are actually happening. And in this one battle, wait, which battle is it? Because there's different names of the different. What's the battle that it's in episode 4? Rook's Rest?
Rook's Rest, but I was also thinking about reunion as well in relation to Baby Jane.
Oh, yeah. There's multiple layers of there's like Alicent and Rhaenyra have their kind of Baby Jane, but also I was thinking of Aegon and Aemond having their like.
Oh yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
The bedridden prince fearing for his life.
Yeah, and put it there by. Well, I guess so. Whatever happened to Baby Jane, we end up finding out it's.
It still is very Baby Jane. It still like is very much Baby Jane in the sense that like it was Blanche's fault in the end. Like Aegon kind of did start this like cycle of bullying Aemond. So even though Aegon is in a very vulnerable position and is like fearing for his life, he like did start the cycle years and years ago. Like Blanche did in Baby Jane.
Yeah, and so for background, Aemond has a lot of deep-rooted issues with things, probably intimacy as well, because when he was 13, his older brother Aegon kind of coerced him into losing his virginity at a brothel, and then years later, as an adult, Aemond seeks out the same experience, only now he's more in control of it. So they definitely have a lot of trauma. Aemond has trauma, and he's a little vengeful, he's a little angry about that, hence this Baby Jane dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, and
we
also
also need to like cover Aemond a bit later
Okay.
on.
Aemond also
There's like so many characters.
Yeah.
that we can-
We have an undertaking.
I often see the thing that Aemond is kind of self-conscious about is that he's the second son.
Yeah.
He
No, that
doesn't
definitely
have as
yeah.
much of a claim to the throne as Aegon does. And for the longest time, even though he ends up getting the biggest, baddest, oldest dragon, he hadn't had a dragon, and he was teased mercilessly, like, throughout his childhood by his older brother. So in some ways, Aemond torching Aegon is like a delayed revenge for all of that bullying.
Yeah. Like I don't think Aemond would be like conscious of like sexual trauma because like in the society, you're a man as soon as you can wield a sword, basically. And they wouldn't really have the same sort of knowledge of these things. But I definitely think in the scene where he revisits the brothel, you can definitely tell he has like unresolved issues.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Aegon's also really not great in many ways. One of his introduction after the time
But
jump
I
is
also love him.
his mom helping cover up him raping a
A
girl.
crime. Yeah.
Like, and you see that he has a bunch of bastards that he doesn't really care about that are literally in child fighting pits. Like,
That was camp. I'm sorry. Like filed down teeth.
The child
Yeah.
fighting pits are very like exploitation film.
Yeah.
Very, very sign of the cross
mm,
Colosseum scene.
because but it is also like so it's really is really it's so camp to have all of these just like awful people walking around, pun intended, slaying. Like they are they are icons. They're like their characters are like the actors are all really charismatic. They're all very like they bring a lot of humor to the roles, especially Tom Glencairn, like who plays Aegon, is so freaking
Aegon is
funny
camp to me. His little
Yeah.
cape
And that side
swish.
didn't really come out until season two. Like in season two, because in season one, he's established as basically like Joffrey 2.0, like tyrant, young king. But in season two, you've got these lines or these beats that are actually kind of funny. And it's coming from a rapist tyrant.
Yeah.
And his Aegoons, as they were dubbed.
Yes,
by the
Yeah.
internet.
he has henchmen who hype him up and follow him around.
The scene where
Like, come on.
He's just a little guy.
I mean, I think the scene where why am I blanking on Allison's dad's name? I know the actor's name is
Otto.
Otto.
The momager, Chris Jenner.
When Otto finds out the plan, the brilliant plan, literally as it
He's
gets
pretending to be the twin.
And
brilliant.
What has Sir Kristen Cole done?
It's
thoughtless, feckless. Like the quotability of the show is like part of why it's camp, and it kind of relates to the Danielle Harris article.
yeah. Oh, please bring in those quotes if you have them.
Sources, yes.
Yeah, so in relation to like the thorough quotability of this show and how like just by quoting things you can like recognize fellow fans, one of the things that I took note of was so basically the whole article kind of traces the history of like diva worship and like standing all these old Hollywood women and female characters and actresses, and kind of posits that this standing was a kind of way for LGBTQ people to recognize each other and find culture among each other, since there isn't really like any inherent physical or like characterization similarities amongst LGBTQ people, unlike like ethnic minorities or like people who speak specific languages all can very easily recognize each other by just like looking at each other or hearing each other, and that's not really the case with LGBTQ people, so they have resorted to signifiers like friend of Dorothy and
that's
such.
exactly
like,
what I was gonna say because I
like
had Wicked
they
on the brain.
yeah
like are you into
yeah
musical
so
theater?
basically these are cultural
Well, yeah, that's the
basically
thing.
these are cultural touchstones to be able to find community.
Well, that's the
and
thing. Specifically with
and like
LGBT, like Alicent Hightower is seen by a lot of, fandom sapphics as like a lesbian icon. So to the point where when I'm scrolling Twitter, if I see a post from someone whose profile picture is Alicent Hightower, I'm like, oh, that's a lesbian. That's a bisexual woman. That's someone who likes women sexually because the community has like latched on, even though it's not textually explicit yet, question mark, like you can identify your people who are Alicent fans as probably lesbian.
I love that. Well, and I
yeah,
love that.
and there's also like certain types of fandoms for the characters, and I feel like it's really fun that the hype around Sir Simon Strong coincided with this sort of mainstreaming of diva, and everyone's like this diva to this older man who has really cool outfits and is just really chill and is trying to deal with Damon in his house.
I I was going
It
through
kind
my
of Otto kind of has a similar fan
Vibe,
base.
yeah.
yeah, but I love Sir Simon Strong. I feel like I my articulation of why that character works so well is that Harrenhal is like haunted. It's got weird creepy magic. There's kind of this like weird little gothic subplot going on in season 2 where like Damon is having all these nightmares and all this weird stuff is going on. And Sir Simon Strong is just a guy and he doesn't seem to know what genre he's in. Like he knows that there's like stakes with the crown and like succession and stuff, but he's just like walking around this decrepit, terrifying like castle that like that's just his home and he doesn't seem to be bothered by like
Well, he's even a little sassy about it.
yeah.
And I think that's why he works because, he just looks like a regular old fellow. Like he's not really portrayed by an effeminate actor or anything, but he has like an air of sass about him and which is at odds with his
And like the
presentation.
outfits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were so many jokes about
Yeah.
how like he keeps saying that Harrenhal is broke, and like the outfits are probably the reason why Harrenhal is broke because he
Yeah.
spends all his money on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
But
like
yeah, and a specific to like just have a specific quote in like relation to the kind of fandom and quoting be able to like signify to people like if you're like and like the different connotations of each sub fandom within the show. Harris says film divas have been so important to gay culture because of the role they played in consolidating it. Fandom, in other words, was an emphatic political assertion of camaraderie, as was the gay sensibility itself, which did not emanate from some sort of deeply embedded homosexual quote unquote soul, but arose as a way of achieving a collective subcultural identity.
Oh, I love that. Do you think this argument might make some people on Twitter pissed?
I mean, they're always pissed.
Absolutely.
They're always angry.
What doesn't piss this fandom?
But
It's
just
a-
being like, hey, standing one of the character, like if you're really like
A stan?
obsessive about a fan character, that's gay culture, honey. Like
Hey, we differentiated. The Alicent fandom is the explicitly like gay culture in joke fandom, but just in general, I guess you could allude to diva worship. So like, don't crucify us on Twitter.
But I mean, we have sources.
Yeah, and I do feel like it can apply
Yeah.
to so many of the characters in the show. And like also maybe even like within the show with the whole relationship between Damon and Aemond.
Mm.
Because like I think it might have been you, Saffron, or someone said it that like Amond feels like drag.
Oh, you sent me a tweet about that. I wish I had said
Oh,
that.
yeah. Terminology, Amond is Damon in quotations.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I do.
But like with a little bit more extra with the whole eye patch and the perfect hair.
Yeah.
And don't forget the
Like there's something,
blinged out sapphire eye underneath the eye patch that we got a nice look
yeah.
at in Storm's End. They had like that whole shot. Like they were excited for that reveal.
Yeah. And his whole look kind of relates to his sense of Targaryen superiority and how he's like the Targaryen, so he like has to look this fantasy vibe and like very militaristic and also very elf-like as
Yeah. Like
well.
he's an albino prince with long hair who wears black leather all the time. And it shouldn't surprise listeners that this man has the most fan fiction written about him, I think, out of any House of the Dragon or original Game of Thrones character. He is very popular with women online, not so much in the show yet.
I I also find the fact that like both Damon and Aemond have these like swaggering personas while we then also see them in these intimate settings being really like unsure. And I mean, Damon has this whole like issue of throughout season 1 mostly like he can't get hard, and it's like kind of, I don't know if it really is even played for jokes, because it's like part of his characterization that he has to put on this like really violent persona when really he's just kind of insecure and self-conscious, and he has to like have freaking therapy by hallucination throughout season 2 to learn, actually I do really like, I'm fine with my wife being queen and I respect her, and I
Yeah, and I don't think it's a coincidence that in season 2 we literally see Damon transform into Aemond in that one vision, because in season 2 Aemond is literally naked and vulnerable in the arms of a motherly figure, you
mm-hmm.
know? And that actually surprised some of his fangirls who in fan fiction usually write him as like, a dom. And that was kind of at odds with his fandom characterization, seeing him so naked and vulnerable. Yeah.
And it kind of echoes that scene in the pilot episode where Damon kind of drapes himself in that blanket.
Yeah, like the Aemond Damon, I guess, synergy is there. And now that we know they're fated to interact in the future, is probably just going to ramp up from there.
Yeah. I mean, I Fabiola,
Yeah, and it
long time ago in our the bonus pod for the Valkyrie cycle, our other podcast I worked on, you proposed for manipulative bitch and gender fucked attack dog that both Damon and Aemond are gender fucked attack dogs who basically are more interested
yeah.
in having someone manipulate them rather than be manipulative themselves.
Ooh, that's a good take. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the direction the show is going to go in, but I can see hints of that absolutely, and I think that that is more interesting of a characterization because, on a basic simple answer, subversion of gender expectations makes my queer little heart happy.
Yeah, and also we do.
Yeah, and that very much that kind of leads to the whole Damon and Rhaenyra dynamic.
Yeah.
Which is how like they both want to be each other.
Oh
and
my
like
God,
the
yeah.
sense of wanting to be each other is very thoroughly tied to gender, especially like in the society that they live in. And like Rhaenyra explicitly says that Daemon is everything she wanted to be, and in a
Mm.
way Daemon is everything Rhaenyra is everything.
Damon wants to be. Yeah.
Probably he probably as like a sister wife to Viserys, with like how much he wants Viserys's attention in the first season. And like still a lot of his arc in the second season is about like grieving Viserys and coming to terms with Viserys's passing and his legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and specifically Rhaenyra being Viserys's choice over him, because when he sees the young Rhaenyra, hallucination, she is on the Iron Throne and she is wearing the crown. And then later he talks about the crown with Viserys. So that's very much, all his angst coming to a head.
Yeah, and like young Rhaenyra in the visions is very like a Rhaenyra in quotations,
Mm.
specifically her on the throne, because like not only is she wearing the crown, but also the outfit Rhaenyra wears in the season one finale. So
Hmm.
it's everything just kind of looks too big on her.
Yeah. Well, and also like that's literally his kind of memory or interpretation of her, or potentially some influence by Alice. We don't really. The Harrenhal arc is kind of weird because we don't really know what's happening. We can kind of assume that it's probably from the woman who keeps making weird potions and telling Damon to drink them and giving him cryptic lines of wisdom.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my friend actually didn't really understand why Damon was surprising, because in the behind the episode for the finale, they
Mhm.
say oh, Damon has always rejected the supernatural, but now at last he's accepted it. But but like Damon but Damon has been established to be into Old Valyria, which is, the magic capital of the world, west of, well, the Song of Ice and Fire before it got destroyed. But he's presented as more of a skeptic. So, there are a lot of different thoughts on his arc, polarization. But it did seem a little muddled, and it did seem kind of rushed, and like they were maybe a bit repetitive at times. But again, the writers were working with what they were working with.
Yeah, because for
Yeah, and
context,
I also
we should
yeah, and I
mention season two
also
was started it, like basically they had finished writing the scripts when the writer's strike happened, but because of the strike they were able to film, but writers weren't able to be on sets, so things weren't able to be changed at all. And also HBO Max cut their season from 10 episodes to 8 episodes, kind of right before, right, was it right before they
that
finished writing or right before they started writing?
George's assistant posits right before they finished is the
Okay,
theory.
so it's not confirmed, it's just a theory.
It's a theory from George R. R. Martin's assistant.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
like there is some ground to it. It's not like something that someone came up with. It's like speculation close to the source.
But it is absolutely confirmed that they weren't able to have writers on set and they weren't able to change
Yeah,
anything
the
because of the
filming
strike.
basically spanned the entire strike duration.
Yeah, which is also true for Interview with the Vampire season 2. And I think
Wow.
both of those are
The par-
seasons that are really good but kind of suffer from pacing issues.
But yeah, what I was gonna quickly say about Damon's skepticism, I feel like it's he believes in magic, like if he actually sees it, like with the dragons, but like even back in season one, he didn't believe in Viserys's dreams or anything because he just sees them as dreams. But Harrenhal like made him way more susceptible to believing in dreams than he previously was. But yeah, at least
So
that's my
it's kind
take.
of like how dragons are like fire made flesh and like a fantastical aspect that's like present in everyday life, whereas, risking life and limb on a vision is a little more too abstract for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also add, personally, the way I tend to interpret media is I take everything the creators say with a grain of salt, because yeah, we can take what their interpretation of events like into our analysis, but I guess what I would say is there's a difference between going, the creators are saying that this was their intention and I don't see that being translated into the story. Like, I feel like if that's what they were trying to tell, like, I don't think that was effective, versus, oh, they're saying that this is true and I don't agree with that characterization based on my own opinions about what the character should be.
Yeah, to keep in mind with this show is actors have said, like, sometimes you get conflicting statements from like the same actor. Like, I know
Yeah.
Ewan Mitchell, who plays Aemond, might have said several different things. I know the different actors playing Rhaenyra and Alicent may have said different things. Like, this is very much like a fluid, they don't say one thing and it's necessarily like their consistent opinion, you know?
Because also it words can be taken out of context by reporters and like the editors of the behind the scenes content. I think that, I don't know, there's multiple reasons that I personally tend to kind of take that supplemental material with some, I don't know, I guess some hesitation personally. But I absolutely understand like why Harrenhal arc might not work for some people, because I do think in some ways it's not just that like they might not be used to all of the magical stuff, but it's kind of a little bit of a different genre than the rest of the show. Like, it is absolutely still melodrama, but like I said, it's a bit more gothic. It's a bit more dark
Yeah.
and
Full
weird.
gothic haunted
Yeah.
house.
No, I really, I
People were
really
calling it Luigi's
like,
Mansion.
yeah, Luigi's Damon's Mansion. Yeah. No, I tend to
And
agree
I
with
thought
my
that was
friends.
fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Like, we both really liked like the vibes and what they were going for. But like with the whole Alice's role and like what her motivations may have been, and then also, again in the finale, tying it to the threat in the main series, the White Walkers, that might not have landed for some people. Just like tying it because it's like, hey, we're a franchise. We're tying it back into the thing that you know and love and maybe fear from the original series. But like the vibes were immaculate. I have no complaints about the vibes.
The moment he arrives at Harrenhal, there's a bunch of bats flying by him.
Yeah.
I was like,
I
okay,
was saying
yeah.
it's giving Scooby-Doo. It's when they like
Yeah.
go to one of the creepy abandoned theme parks that someone is secretly like in a monster costume to extort the locals. Like, I was like, that's Scooby-Doo.
Alice,
And like he
they pull off the
accuses
mask
Simon
and
of
it's
doing
Alice.
that.
Yeah,
He
yeah, it's just
accuses Simon of
Alice.
doing that.
Alice just wants to keep the rent low.
No, but it's favorite running joke about season 2 is Damon thinking someone poisoned his peas. I mean, I don't even know if that's really a running joke that's in the show or just like it was a recurring bit in Dragon Talk where they're like, Damon's like, they're someone's poisoning me. I don't want to eat those peas. They're
I
trying
don't
to
know.
poison.
Maybe it's all that goop you've been drinking from the strange woman.
Yeah.
It's just such a really fun vibe that I feel like people were both taking too seriously and also like not recognizing what the point was, because like
Mm.
it was all a vehicle of doing like character introspection, and like how one of his visions was of him, like what if he was able to spend time with Viserys mourning Queen Emma And so like that's like a very sweet moment to give him, and like it does show that they do love this character, and like the whole arc is very much an examination of Damon and him realizing he's not really fit to be king, because like a lot of the interactions with like Oscar Tully and the Blackens and Brackwoods, it's all very much kingly duties of diplomacy and settling disputes, and he realizes that he hates it. But it's also just like a really fun arc in an area of Westeros that's notoriously magical and a bit warped, and it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, for context, Harrenhal has been cursed forever. Just like don't become a Lord of Harrenhal. It's like how in Harry Potter, I know Harry Potter, like the professor for like the defense against the dark arts like always gets replaced like at the end of every movie. Like it's just Harrenhal is a location that you do not want to be in charge of because it will always screw you over.
But it's also very strategically valuable.
Yeah, it's like
because
it's like
also
someone
so
has
big
to
it can
hold
house
Harrenhal,
armies.
but no one wants to.
I wanted to quickly say on the idea of like people kind of taking Harrenhal too seriously. I feel like, to me, one thing that helped me understand kind of like a way to engage with this text is realizing that George R. R. Martin is maybe a bit of a troll, or at least he's just having fun, given the fact that aren't like the various like lords and
A River Run? Are you going for the Muppets reference?
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's the Lord Grover Tully and
Elmo.
They cut Elmo and Kermit, but they're in the book.
And Oscar, like it's literally all Muppets, and
Yeah,
he named them after Muppets.
He was taking the piss.
It's like how can you know that fact and then be like, this is my serious fantasy show? Like, no, it's silly and fun.
I think he has
and like I feel
several
like
other names that are references to something, but I can't recall off the top of my head. Like I think one Dornish House may be a reference to like a publishing company. But yeah, like he's not above like doing a little shout out or a little reference when he wants to.
Yeah, and I feel like this connect with people watch Game of Thrones and the people who have also read the books, and like both of these groups of people watching House of the Dragon, because definitely stylistically House of the Dragon is more book accurate in terms of vibes and sense of fantasy. Meanwhile, Game of Thrones very notoriously wanted to scrub a lot of that out and like have it be as mass appeal as possible.
Yeah, and also like if you do something as like a joke reference, it's gonna be, you know, cut for drama. But like the thing with the Tor is it's the seat of House Jourdain in Dorne, and the Tor was named by Gurm in reference to Tor, which is the publisher of Robert Jordan, who is the namesake of House Jourdain. Like that's like a subtle reference that like you wouldn't pick up on in a fantasy context. But like the Muppets, like come on, like everyone loves the Muppets. You're gonna like notice when they're like at
and
least
the Boltons are supposed to be wearing pink.
Yeah,
the Boltons are supposed to be wearing pink, and they don't in the Game of Thrones show, but their color is pink.
I mean, and that was like an actual medieval color, right? Like that was
but the thing is, late season Game of Thrones was like a little too scared of like not being grimdark with the costuming. Like everyone starts wearing black leather all the time and like more armored looks to show these are the later seasons and we're serious now and it's time to get real. So like there's no place for more whimsical colors or costumes anymore.
Which I appreciate that in House of the Dragon, like they have this kind of tense scene in the finale where I can't remember which of the Lannister brothers it is because I get them confused, but the one he's going and talking to
The pirate?
the pirates basically, yeah, and
Oh, Thailand, yeah.
It's Thailand.
and it's this important like kind of political conversation, but it's also like people with dyed beards and hair, and there's a monkey,
which is book accurate.
Yeah, Dario was supposed to have like a gold mustache and a blue beard and make us question Daenerys's choice of men. But yeah.
But he just looks like a regular guy.
He just looks like a hot, suave brunette in the show, and it's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, I've only watched House of the Dragon, and I'm hoping that it sticks to its fun colors and costume design. And I know that requires a budget, and maybe that's why they have only 8 episodes this season, because it was like gotta limit how much they're spending. But I really hope they get more episodes in future seasons, and that they can keep exploring this kind of style, because it's cool. It's fun to have fun.
Yeah, that's why, and again, the type of fun is more appealing. Like, I know Fabiola's talked about how the humor in House of the Dragon appeals more because in Game of Thrones they basically had Bronn and Tyrion as like the humor guys, and a lot of their jokes were like, "Hey,
Bronn is the worst
let's
character ever made.
Let's talk about how funny dicks are." And like the humor in House of the Dragon is a little more to our sensibilities. So yeah.
Yeah, and like speaking of costumes, I have to shout out Aegon's armor, which has like a sort of crown replica maybe on the helmet to still signify that he's the king. And like this is a thoroughly image-driven show, because a lot of the costumes signify like a character's mindset. Like Rhaenyra progressively gets more militaristic, and she starts wearing the Visenya braid, which is like
the outfit during the red sewing, I think was my favorite, like in the entire show.
Yeah. And then Alicent slowly phases out the greens and ends up in blue, which was her color from the first episode or so of the whole show.
Yeah.
And I really like want to talk more in depth about Rhaenyra and Alicent and like how they're written, and also the fandom around them, and also kind of the playful jabbing. Because it very much does relate to like the evolution of diva worship.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we've explicitly said yet, but Alicent was Rhaenyra's best friend in childhood, and her father, Otto, was hand to the king at the beginning, so basically his advisor. And then Otto is ambitious, like pretty much everyone in the show seems to be to some degree, and Rhaenyra then marries Viserys, Rhaenyra's father, and so then they are put at odds to each other because now Alicent's children are heirs to the throne in opposition to Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. And they are like, the show is about their relationship. Like, it is absolutely the center of the story, even though technically like Aegon's the other claim to the throne. Like,
a fact some people are still very mad over.
But like all of the promo, all of the marketing, all of the like, and then textually, like all of like the kind of comparison imagery, the way things are set up, it's about their relationship. And I think what is because that's where their conflict comes from. The conflict doesn't, like, yeah, Aegon has his issues and he's complicated, but like the conflict comes from these women in positions of power struggling against this like feudal system.
Yeah.
And like it adds to how complicated the conflict is, because it really shows that like the issues started way before Aegon even existed. Even though
Yeah.
he's technically the rival, a lot of like the seeds of the conflict existed years before him.
And before, this part was like retold and I think compiled in Fire and Blood, I'm pretty sure the original novella was titled The Princess and the Queen, referring to Rhaenyra and Alicent. So people who are like, oh, this should be like a battle of half siblings, they even aren't being as true to the text as they think they are.
Mm.
Yeah, and George also wanted the series to start with Aemon and Balon and how their deaths and led to a succession crisis between Viserys and Rhaenys. So like George wanted to go even way further in the past.
Of course he did. I didn't know that, but that definitely sounds like something he would do, so I'm not even going to dispute it. He's like, hey, we don't have a lot of episodes, but I really want this.
Yeah, and so Rhaenys is after this one, it was Jaehaerys was the king, and when he died, it was up to whether the daughter of his first son or the son of his cousin, is that what it was? Or
she's Aemon's daughter, and Viserys. Yeah, so basically Rhaenys is Aemon's daughter, who is the older brother, and Viserys is Balon's son, who was the second son.
I see.
So like even though gender is very much an aspect in the Great Council, that's the literal first scene of the entire show, it also is very much about it was very much about his inheritance from the eldest to eldest, or is it like eldest living male to eldest child?
Yeah, and yeah, Rhaenys is looked over, and so then she's the queen who never was, and then has an interesting relationship with Rhaenyra because of that. If I'm gonna quickly say, the one criticism that I have of season 2, that because I'm just like, how did this never get brought up again, was Laenor, his supposed death, that this rumor gets circulate that Rhaenyra and Daemon had a hand in, killing Laenor, and then it's like, and his parents are just gonna keep working with them, and it's never getting brought up. There was so many times where Corlys and Rhaenyra have conversations, and it never gets brought up.
I feel like when it will be brought up, it's gonna be a big blowout argument moment.
Yeah, but it didn't even feel like it factored into characterization. I don't know. Maybe
also,
I'm not.
Laenor, died for
yeah,
real.
I get the criticism. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so I guess because House of the Dragons is gay. It's actually they have a lot of queer characters. They have Abigail Thorne playing this trans pirate captain character. They have Laenor
who is
gay
written as a man in the book.
Yeah. And in the
but
book,
House of the Dragon interprets it as she has to behave so the history records her as a man.
And then the book, Laenor is gay, but they basically instead of in the books that he just died, in the show it's it was a staged death, and he actually was able to escape and go and live with his boyfriend.
Well, in the book it's he was killed by his boyfriend, but was there another motive? Maybe someone else was behind it, but in the show it's Daemon was behind it, but in a good guy way.
Yeah. And then of course,
but also not really, because they have his family believe that all their kids are dead.
But it's still better than
so it's yes but no.
Yeah. And the thing, season 2 choice that I got most excited about, I think, was Mysaria and Rhaenyra share a kiss.
Yeah, right after Mysaria talked about her trauma.
Yeah, but that's part of the melodrama, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It's camp. Rhaenyra was just being a fuckboy and was like, you know what? Now is my time.
And we haven't yet said, like Emma Darcy, who plays Rhaenyra, is non-binary, right? Identifies as non-binary or trans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They, them.
I didn't want to.
And also Emily Carey.
Oh, yeah. I think Emily Carey is she, her, as well as they, them.
Oh, wait. Emily Carey plays
young Alicent.
Young Alicent.
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't know. I feel like, I mean, Emma Darcy's an amazing actor, period. But I think they bring a complexity to Rhaenyra's gender expression that I kind of think I'm like Emma Darcy, you understand gender. Not to say that like a cis person can't like explore gender in an interesting way, but I just like I can tell that there is like so much like thought put to the nuances of gender expectation and gender roles and like being like kind of
the gender presentation of Rhaenyra Targaryen like differs. Like in the book, it's very like, I mean, there's still like Rhaenyra wears armor to take King's Landing, but the casual wear
She's still a Visenya
like,
stan.
Yeah, but in the book it's more like high femme like dresses and jewels, whereas the show I think complicates it in an equally interesting way, where Rhaenyra is taking up the sword in a more maybe direct way than the book counterpart would have. Yeah.
And Sir Stephen was a valiant knight, most regrettable, if perhaps foreseeable. I myself, if you recall, was in favour of treating with Lord Mutton to march on Rook's Rest, a more conventional approach. True, not as sensational. His numbers were few, but we may yet retake.
It is my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me.
It was a bold attempt. I admire you for it. They say you struck Lord Bartimus today, in view of the staff and guard. The household is abuzz with it.
He is lucky I did not have his tongue.
And what did he say that was so deserving?
I have tired of being protected, Jace. I bring to mind too much their mothers, or their daughters. They must see in me a ruler. And the symbols of authority are not jewels and gowns, but the shield and the sword.
My ruler is my mother, and I do not wish it otherwise. Will you lead us to war yourself?
For a certainty, I cannot remain here, pacing the floors, waiting for defeat and despair to visit me.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
I'm doing all I can. I have directed Lord Mouton to march on Rook's Rest and sent another raven to the Vale to persuade...
We may marshal the strength of the Vale, Maidenpool, and all our allies besides. We will still never match the strength of the Green armies. We need Daemon and his dragon.
May I be free for even 1 hour of the constant refrain of Daemon, Daemon, Daemon.
Your Grace.
And I think there's a somewhat famous like quote from Emma Darcy where they explicitly say like Rhaenyra is at odds with her gender. But Rhaenyra should get some they them pronouns as a treat. Because yeah, she talks about multiple times where she was like, you know, especially in season 2 when it's like we're going to war, and she was like, I was never taught to be like because I wasn't born a man, I wasn't taught to like command an army in the way that like my brothers were.
Yeah, that's actually a huge parallel with Cersei Lannister from the original series, because a lot of people just think she's stupid and she can act stupid, but Tywin, her father, never prepared her for the masculine political arena So you really feel like Cersei is in over her head because she never got the training that Jaime or Tyrion would have gotten as the Lord of Casterly Rock. So, in the show, Rhaenyra is in a similar position where, yeah, you don't get trained on how to be a commander when you're born a woman in Westeros.
Yeah, like Rhaenyra and Alicent both have thorough Cerseiisms
Okay.
that I feel like not a lot of people acknowledge.
I mean,
But Cersei's very much acknowledged as like mother in the
Yeah,
fandom.
mother
And
countess.
that also kind of leads, yes, that also kind of
Oh.
leads me into the Camp of Diva Worship article. And this, like, all of these women do have like specific characteristics that add up to diva and camp, and says Joan Crawford and Marlena Dietrich were certainly not irrelevant to gay men's fascination with them. In fact, we related so intensely to the steeliness of these characters that we used them as substitutes for ourselves.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's true because even though Rhaenyra and Alicent, as the main women of House of the Dragon, have a complicated relationship, and fans who love both of them equally, there are definitely people who identify more with Rhaenyra or who identify more with Alicent, maybe like project onto these characters, and that like feeds into like the oftentimes vicious fan wars that mirror the show's conflict.
And I feel like also the evolution of diva worship as outlined by Harris also kind of relates to how like the fans also make little jabs at like the characters that they themselves stan. Like Alicent is often called like a loser.
Oh, like a pathetic wet cat, baby deer. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
And Rhaenyra's kind of stupid
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes.
Rhaenyra is sometimes portrayed as like I don't know, too horny or just like kind of book dumb, I guess.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so like he very much makes a distinction between pre-Stonewall and post-Stonewall diva worship. And he kind of explains that post-Stonewall, since there was like a less of a need to really idolize and put on a pedestal these figures because there were already strides being made. He says by the 80s and 90s, the pantheon of immortals, while still treated reverently by many gay men, had become fair game for ridicule. In the minds of younger homosexuals, the diva is perceived as the emotion of the no longer satisfied with the crumbs of celebrities' half-hearted comfort and support. Homosexuals picked up the discarded costumes and exaggerated mannerisms of these fading reputations and turned them into a communal grab bag for Halloween. The temple of celebrity worship was pillaged and defiled, and the sacred vestments became dresses for drag shows.
Oh, and there was that drag promo for House the Dragon.
Yeah. I mean,
like one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this show is like how I feel like a really under discussed moment of marketing for the show was the House of Drag event that HBO did, which was basically both a kind of drag reenactment of the first season with like the premiere of the first episode. And it was like a whole thing. Like they had Balerian Skull, but it was also like a disco ball.
I found like
And so like there is a sense of like heightened character that like you can perform as these characters. Like they're just so like not necessarily iconic, but just like they're very easy to emulate because of like the how like they've been visualized and also the way that they behave in the show as well. And like Rainier and Alicent, like it's very much like a mother off. Like they're two distinctly different women, but they're also similar in some ways, but they're also very like it's very much a Joan Crawford, Betty Davis situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's maybe why I think the fan base maybe has like taken off, in which woman is more mother in like a way it didn't for the original show, because I guess in the original show the closest you could get to that is like Cersei versus Marjorie Tyrell, but Cersei is very much a main character, like a main antagonist, whereas Marjorie Tyrell was more of a supporting character in Cersei's story, whereas Rhaenyra and Alicent are literally, well, Rhaenyra is top billing, but they're more or less, opposite each other and equally important. So it's more of a mother off than ever before seen in the world of Ice and Fire.
Yeah. And Cersei and Marjorie are like too visually similar.
Yeah, I guess you had.
Meanwhile, Rhaenyra and Alicent are like deliberately
Yeah, they
made to look very
contrast.
different from one
I
another.
guess you had Daenerys and Sansa, but that was in season 8, so we're not going to talk about it.
And like in relation to Rhaenyra and Alicent as like these flawed characters with whom like the fandom lovingly makes fun of. Harris writes, if glamour is a hoax just waiting to be exposed, the very camera that exalted these women was also the agent of their downfall. And therein lies the secret ingredient of gay men's recipe for camp. Long after their idols' reputations had begun to decline, the cameras kept rolling. With the advent of television, the nightly broadcasts of reruns drove the final nails into their coffins. For the first time in history, gay men were allowed to see virtually side by side what these women once were and what they have become.
I think that will definitely come into effect in the later seasons of House of the Dragon, because the whole meta narrative is this is a tragedy, and everyone knows that these women will eventually become totally undone by their houses, by the conflict, and by each other, and definitely by themselves. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that in the book, Alicent, what we know of the historical narrative, in the faux historical narrative of Alicent Hightower, is she does very much become a shell of her former self by the end of the Dance of the Dragons. We don't know how far the show will play out, but I could definitely see that quote utilized in the future.
Like, since we're halfway through the show, kind of, the things are already there, especially since the first half, the first season is like them as young teenagers. So like we've already seen them at their best selves. And so it's just all downhill from there.
Relatable.
I was gonna say, I feel like
You were gonna say something.
I was gonna say I don't really have many other notes or like observations or things I wanted to talk about, but I think if you guys, unless you guys have like other big points, like this feels like a good place to kind of like wrap up by saying like, because like you said, this is a show that is only half of it is out. What are predictions, or rather hopes, that you have for the series going forward, to like in this context of camp and in this context of like what directions do you think the show might take that would continue this melodrama and tragedy?
In the context of camp, I would say
I hope the girls get worse.
Yeah, I hope Rhaenyra.
I mean, they do in the book.
I hope Rhaenyra becomes a monster, and I'm not saying that because I hate Rhaenyra. I'm saying that because I made a Phantom of the Opera edit of Rhaenyra, and I want it to become true. I want her legend to grow in a negative way.
Yeah, but my favorite Rhaenyra episode so far is the Red Sewing, which I also feel like she's like particularly diva mother in it. Because she's like in this beautiful red gown, just letting dozens of people get torched by a dragon, and she's like watching it from her balcony.
Yeah. It's very like Empress, like serene in a menacing way.
I haven't yet pointed out that our season of cruelty, as we've kind of dubbed this, like I feel like all of our talk of moral grayness and characters being awful, it makes it pretty obvious that like this show absolutely falls into that. Like how these characters are divas, they're camp legends, kind of because they're so awful and cruel.
Yeah, that's actually, I watched the show before season 2 when I watched with you guys. I watched the first season with my dad, and my dad's complaint was there's no one he can root for. Like, and he was a fan of the original Game of Thrones because you had plucky underdogs like Tyrion or Jon Snow who were more traditional heroes, but he found himself kind of hating everyone. And that's why I like House of the Dragon, because they're not afraid to make everyone kind of shitty.
Yeah, and that's kind of why the complaint of like how they've like whitewashed Rainier and Alicent to be kind of weird, because if you actually watch the show, you realize that they're both kind of awful, but we love them, and like they are sympathetic characters, but they're also awful.
Yeah.
My like possibly last final quote from the supplementary material, and camp is about knocking the idol off of her pedestal. It is the gleeful sadism of the fan who has been tricked, who realizes that his youthful cinematic fantasies are false, that his role models are marionettes. At the core of gay heroship is its own negation. At the heart of glamour, the grotesque. The diva was not a goddess, she was flesh and blood. In the case of the diva, the press was there to get it all down.
I feel like this could apply to the fandom in amusing ways as the show goes on, but I just wanted to get my camp like hope in like before we wrap up. So basically, it's been alluded to by the prophecies and the visions that Damon and Aemond are going to interact, and in the book, this is an extremely like unrealistic battle. Like it involves like dragon hopping and like an epic slashing, and like it is incredibly, for lack of a better word, anime, like shonen Japanese anime battle. And I hope they do not try to make it more gritty and realistic, because I want to see Damon flying off a dragon so bad. And I hope they do not.
He needs to jump.
I hope they don't shy away from it because they're afraid of looking cheesy, because I think it could be something so beautiful to me personally.
I mean, it's already unrealistic. They're flying on dragonback. Why?
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like the fantasy pros are like, our fantasy can't be too fantasy. It has to be like football.
Yeah. And that's,
oh God.
That's not why I watch this show. I watch it because
I have a whole list of like camp wishes.
Yes. Go off.
Like first and foremost, heavy on the chain imagery next season. I need it. I need the tent. Book readers and those who know, please go with the tent death. I love it. And again,
I don't know what that means.
Damon, if they do it, you'll see, and if they don't, I'll tell you about it in a couple of years.
Yeah,
but I love the tent.
Join us next time in 3 years.
I hope they show Dalton Greyjoy, because like he's like one of my main glup shittos of the dance, because he's just like a 16-year-old Morin Joe from the Mad Max
universe, transplanted into Westeros.
Like that image is just so fun to me. Yeah, and like I said, I want the mothers to get worse.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I've gotten to watch the show with you guys. I still think I'm kind of just in it for Alicent, but I'm with you. I don't really know if I have wishes that are different than y'all's. I guess my wish is more less about content and more about production, is just God HBO, please give them more than 8
HBO
episodes.
Please treat the writers nicely because Twitter won't.
And make it more gay. Even more gay, please. Please and thank you.
Amen.
I hope they make Darren gay.
Yeah, we need gay Daron, and we need a all-female love triangle between Alicent, Massaria, and Rhaenyra, because that is very rare, and it would make me happy.
If the next season goes how I want it to go, it's gonna be like particularly camp and melodramatic. And like a specific set of characters will be just locked in the Red Keep together, which would be fun.
From your lips to Ryan Condal's ears.
Don't be afraid of some kinky imagery. Literally, take notes from Interview with the Vampire, House the Dragon.
Take notes from the book. Like,
Yeah.
I keep saying I'm not like a book purist, but there are certain things in that book that need to happen in the show. For me personally.
Well, are there any last thoughts? This has been a really good episode.
Well, no, just thanks for having me on. I hate the sound of my own voice, but I like talking to you guys, so I hope you found it productive.
And I have this.
Thank you for editing.
Thank you.
But thank you for being, seriously, I'm so glad you got to be on this, Erika.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed chatting with you guys as usual. And if you ever want to watch season 3 when it comes out in 4 years, I'll be down.
Yes, I can't wait. And in the meantime, I guess time to go rewatch that Rhaenyra and Mysaria kiss.
Hell yeah.
Every time I record these, I'm like, I don't think I articulated myself well or explained why something is camp.
You brought your sources.
And I'm like, did I make the case for House of the Dragon?
Well, to our listeners, leave it in the comments whether you're convinced. But I'll tell you now, I am. And
like, at least be convinced that it's a melodrama, and that's the lens that you have to watch this show through.
Yeah. And you know what? I'd be down for doing a part 2 whenever the series finishes up. That could also be interesting to revisit our thoughts, but that would probably be in like 6 years or whatever. So who knows if this show will still be going on then. But...
Yeah, part of my love for this section of like Westerosi history is how like this war just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's like a progressively good story.
There was so much to discuss today, and I'm sure there'll be more to discuss in the future. But no matter what, I'm happy that I'm satisfied with what we've seen so far. And that might not be for everyone.
We didn't even talk about the Jace issues.
Screw Jace. Sorry.
No! I love him. He got so weird this season. I loved him.
I'm surprised we didn't mention Alan and Sea Smoke, because that was kind of camp.
Just this dragon chasing this man around.
Yeah. All of the dragons. I mean, it's just about the stakes.
Sunfire is the most camp dragon, for the record.
Leave in the comments below.
He's like glittery and he feels like he should be a girl, but isn't.
Literally, that's like half the male characters in the show.
Yeah.
Well, if you aren't going to leave a comment about whether you're convinced that it's a... Oh my god, that card. If you aren't going to leave in the comments that you're convinced that House of the Dragon is a melodrama and or camp, leave in the comments which is your favorite dragon, because they are all beautiful for different reasons, and I'd love to hear people's favorites. Mine is Sea Smoke. Love that silly little guy.
I have like a cluster of favorites. Like, I love Sunfire, I love Craxes, I love Moondancer, I like that Cyrex is just perpetually tiny forever. I love Cyrex's little like heart pendant.
Erika, do you have a favorite dragon to sign us off with?
Probably Caraxes, because he looks like a noodle, and I have a dog that's part dachshund, and it shows in her torso.
Oh,
I love the noodle of the world, and that's my final comment.
hell yeah.
And also shout out to Morgul, who I think doesn't quite exist in the show, but that's Jaehaera's little baby dragon. And just the idea of little Jaehaera having a dragon named Death, and the dragon likely being black, and it's like this tiny black dragon with this little girl. I love them.
That's pretty iconic image right there. Well, this we already said our thank yous and our sign off. That's the show. Yeah. I have been your co-host, Saffron Hefta-Gaub. You can follow me online everywhere at Gaub Hefta.
And I've been your other co-host, Fabiola. You can find me on Instagram at Fabi0LAHH and on Twitter at Fabiola_Liaño.
Our theme song that you're bobbing your head to right now is by Harrison Lurie.
Give us a rating on Spotify and a review on Apple.
Thank you to our patrons, Nicole Veneto, Jose Liano, and Pericles Sparrow. Please check our episode description for additional links and citations.
Thank you so much.